Field Yates. Here's Field Yates laying out a plan that he believes internally the Jets should be looking to accomplish over the next 2 drafts. Again, here's Field Yates talking Jets future.
Is that if I'm the Jets, like my vision, my plan is pretty straightforward. Between this year and next, you've got 9 picks in the first 2 rounds. 9 divided by 22 is nearly 40% of your roster. The Jets can add 40% of their starting roster over the next 2 drafts. Now, do they have to use all 9 of those picks? No, they can consolidate and navigate the board. But I sort of have the holistic approach for the Jets over the next 2 years is that I want to see if we can go 9 for 9. If I can use these 9 assets to acquire probably at minimum 7, but potentially 9 starters, you're changing the franchise. You have to get a quarterback along the way somewhere in there. How many teams can say that? 40% of your starting roster over a 2 draft span would be utterly ridiculous. I know the odds would tell us that's not likely to happen, but if I'm the Jets, my mindset is let's plan on doing exactly that.
So I like the premise, Nick. Here's the problem. Look, I'm terrible at math, so I don't kill Phil Yates for this. But where's he getting 9 from? Because if you just say, okay, the Jets have 4 picks in the first and second round this year, and then next year they have 3 first rounders in 2027 and then 1 second rounder. Where am I missing the 9 from? I don't like the math is not mathing.
It's a third, I think he's talking about a 3rd round pick. I believe they have their 3rd round pick in 2027 at this point. I think that's what he's kind of looking at and saying, hey, don't discredit a 3rd round pick. They can come in and start for a lot of teams. But listen, the crux of it, whether it's 8, whether it's 9, you should be coming away. The expectation needs to come away with, if the Jets are making all 8 picks, they all need to be starters. They all need to be high impact players, and they need to be able to show something early on in their NFL careers, particularly at the quarterback position. He mentioned They need to, one of these picks needs to be a quarterback, and this quarterback needs to be able to come in and play well, not necessarily right away where he's Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but he needs to show a level of competency that the Jets have not had at the quarterback position in over 2 decades. We talk about the 2000 draft being a transcendent draft for the Jets, really created a bubble for them to consistently make the playoffs as often as they did. And then, of course, you look at, the 2006 draft with the Brickashaw Ferguson and then Mangold. Those kind of drafts are transcendent because it helps you build a foundation for the future. And that's what the Jets need to take away, not only in this draft, but in next draft. Even if they come away, let's just say for shits and giggles, they will trade up in the draft this year. They trade up and go into the top 10 and they give up a 2nd round pick. And now it's only 3 draft picks within the first 50 overall selections. Well, those 3 picks need to be hammered home. They need to be surefire starters, guys that they can trust right away to play immediately. Next year, you have all 3 first-round picks. Those 3 first-round picks need to be able to play right away. That's where the Jets are right now. They did a great job of asset management, and now they need to be able to take those assets and build a cohesive football team with it.
Comments, questions, super chats. They cut the line. He specifically said 1st and 2nd round picks, so his math is a little off. But, Nick, I'd be surprised if the Jets over the next 2 drafts aren't wheeling and dealing at some point.
Sure.
The benefit of having all of these picks is that you can control the draft. If you want to move back, you could do that and get more picks for the future. And if there's someone you like, you could potentially move up, which brings me to something that Rich Cimini said on the Jets Collective podcast I host with him and Brandon Tierney every week. He has heard rumblings that if one of the big 3 receivers, that would be Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, or Jordan Tyson, start to slide, the Jets would be willing to be aggressive to go up and get one of those players. What are your thoughts on that?
The math is there as well. You really look at kind of the projections of where the top players are in this draft, and it kind of shows the point that these receivers are probably going to fall, and a couple of them may fall into the teens. You look at Mekhi Lemon. Ian Rappaport had a comment, I believe it was yesterday, saying Mekhi could be available after the 15th overall pick, which would be, of course, a dream come true for the New York Jets. But then you look at Jordan Tyson, his injury questions. A top 10 team is not going to jump at a possibility of a receiver who's been hurt as much as he has. And, of course, Carnell Tate, I think he's the number 1 receiver in this class. It's going to be hard for him to get out of the 10 spot. But if you're the Jets and you really want Carnell Tate and you want him to be somewhere in the 7 to 9 range where Kansas City drafts and where Washington drafts at 7, there's a path there for that to happen. You look at the best players in this draft: Jeremiah Love, Fernando Mendoza, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, Sonny Styles, and Caleb Downs. Those are 6 players right off the bat that are going to go most likely in order within the top 6 overall selections. That leaves you Washington at 7, potentially Kansas City at 9, where if you really want to go after Carnell Tate, that's the kind of move you want. So I think really the board is going to help the Jets out if they go down that rabbit hole, because Washington needs a lot of draft picks. I think they only have 5 or 6 picks in total for this draft class. So you can package a first and second rounder and sort of entice them into a potential trade down. And Kansas City doesn't have a lot of draft picks either. So the math is there and the board is there for the Jets if they want to do it. The only question is if they're able to come to an agreement with either of these teams.
Hit the like button if you're just tuning in. Jets reporter Nick Faria is with us here. Special Saturday show reacting to some comments from Field Yates and Rich Cimini this past week about the Jets potentially making some big moves in the NFL draft. Some other super chats to hit. Roster Dread writes in, go get a wide receiver 1 using 16 and 44. I will continue to say it, Nick. We just talked about it. I think that is the best path for the Jets to get one of these receivers you covet. You still would have pick 33. And if I'm Muji, I'm thinking, okay, I trade up using my extra second. I trade down using pick 33, recoup essentially what I just gave up.
I don't disagree with that. And I had an article come out a couple weeks ago where I argued a different kind of second round pick. I said, listen, if you really want that number 1 receiver or the top receiver of this draft class, 33 should not be blocked. It should be, or potentially, if the Washington Commanders are looking and saying, we want 16 and 33, and then you can get the 7th overall pick and draft Carnell Tate, I am running to the table for that to be able to get the quality receiver necessary to work alongside Garrett Wilson and really bolster this offense. It can't be, if we're talking about 44 and 33 and the potential mindset of trading up for the number 1 receiver in this draft, it can't be a matter of, well, that's a little too rich for my blood. These are second-round picks. Yes, you want to be able to get a starter in the second round, but the 44th overall pick is a very high sought-after draft pick as well. It's got clear value to it. If the Commanders or Chiefs are saying, listen, we can give you your guy, but give us 33, we should not be holding ourselves, the Jets should not be holding ourselves to this notion that 33 is off limits whatsoever. Get your guy if you really want him.
I think that is well said. Get your guy if there's a guy you like, and don't take the chance of getting there at 16 and not having a real plan for the type of player that you want them to take in that moment.
It's just, listen, we can hope and pray. Jets fans can hope and pray that Mekhi Lemon's available. And based on Rappaport's comment yesterday, maybe that's a possibility. And again, if Mekhi Lemon's available at 16, the Jets are running to the table for him because that's a great pick and a great value in the middle of the first round. But if they are all in on Carnell Tate, and of course Garrett Wilson wants Carnell Tate on this roster, if they want him, then you cannot be holden to just, okay, but we don't want to give up a draft pick in the second round. That's 12 picks better than our second round pick. That's too complex. Go get the guy. The receiving class is a good class, but there's a clear drop-off between the big 3 and everybody else. And if you can get one of those 3, you need to go and get them.
Super Chat cut the line. Tenacious has entered the raffle for 2. He bought 2 raffle tickets with this $10 Super Chat. Good job, Tenacious.
Yeah.
Super Chat from the Doc Jeffin says, guys, it's not just about starters in the draft. I can get starters in free agency / trades. 5 first-round picks and 2 I2s should be 3 all-pros. Jets need stars. And I think if you just even break it down in terms of like the roster right now, they've improved their roster. They've raised their floor.
Sure.
Who are the game changers on the Jets right now? Like if you're really going through it, Garrett Wilson, I think he's a game changer. Outside of that, at times Brees can be, but I don't know if I put him in the true game-changing category.
I agree.
Like their offensive line has 2 legit tackles. Membu could be an all-pro, but can a right tackle be a game changer? It's tough. You really got to find those game changers at the top of the draft, which is why, you have to get it right at 2 with either Reese or Bailey. They got to be true transcendent talents.
And that's the key. And this comment here from Doc talking about needing 3 All-Pros, I don't want to just sit there and say the requirement must be All-Pros, because the big difference between getting starters in the draft and getting starters in free agency, if you're paying a starter in free agency, you're paying him market value around $15 to $20 million, let's say, give or take position, 15 to 20 million per starter per position group. Well, if you're drafting a player and he's a starter, you're paying him half of that, at most half of that. You get a starter in the first round, you're paying him essentially the minimum value of the position, whether it's a quarterback, tackle, edge rush, or any of these guys. So to me, it's not just they need to get all pros. There needs to be a distinction here. Starters is the first goal. Everything else is going to be absolute gravy, because you have good quality starters, you can win a lot of football games as long as you hit on every one of these picks.
Happy Saturday. Thanks for joining us. Nick Faria from JetX is with us here. We're talking all things Jets draft, talking all things Jet scenarios in the immediate and the big picture. Sam with a super chat. No need to go up for Tate. Boston is very good. Jets do not have a good history of moving up. I don't know if that's necessarily true. They moved up for Darrelle Revis, who's arguably the best player they've ever had in franchise history as far as just accolades and greatness compared to, all other teams. I mean, that was a famous trade up. I mean, the Jets have moved up before, and it has worked, and plenty of times they moved up and it hasn't. Last year they moved up several times on day 3 and did not have success. I don't look at it that way. If you think that there's a clear difference in a guy like Denzel Boston, who could be available at 16 or 33, and like the big 3 receivers, go out and get your guy. This is why you require extra picks. If you think Carnell Tate's a true difference maker like I do, I have no problem using an extra second-round pick to go up and get him.
I completely agree. And I'm not saying that Boston's bad by any means, but I think he's a reach if the Jets were to take him at 16. I think the only player outside of the big 3 that I think the Jets would be comfortable taking at 16 if you're at receiver is probably Omar Cooper. And that's because Cooper can play both sides. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's a very good X receiver that would really be able to complement Garrett Wilson well. He's not on the same talent level, but I still think he's a quality starter that the Jets would be happy with. But like we talked about, there's a distinction between what Omar Cooper can do and what a guy like Carnell Tate can do, a guy like Mekhi Lemon can do. So I think that distinction is there. And if you're the Jets, if you're unable to get a deal done, it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly something where if you're taking Boston at 16, I think it's a little bit of a reach.
We're brought to you by ZipRecruiter today. Listen up, Jet fans. It's draft season. Everyone's an expert now. Everyone's watching film, and by watching film, I mean 12 minutes of YouTube highlights, and suddenly you're pounding the table like, this is the guy the Jets need to take. We've all been there. Here's the truth. Building a great team isn't about hype. It's about finding the right fit, and if you're running a business, it's no different. You don't want to reach. You don't want to bust. You want someone who actually fits your team, like Nick Faria fits the Jake Asman Show team. That's why you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter does the scouting for you. Their smart matching technology finds top candidates that check all your boxes, and you can even add screening questions, so you're only talking to real difference makers. It's basically like hitting on all your draft picks, which, as Jet fans, we know is easier said than done. Score the best for your team with ZipRecruiter. 4 to 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter, they get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Nick, let's say the Jets stick and pick at 16. What's the best case scenario, and what's a scenario that is the most likely at 16 in your eyes?
I think it's both, one in of itself. I think Mekhi Lemon is probably the best case scenario. He's also probably a likely scenario. We talked about a lot of the teams picking above the Jets. And you look at some of the players and some of the players available, but also some of the teams and their needs. Kansas City, they have a lot of holes outside of wide receiver. I can't really see the Chiefs drafting a receiver where they have offensive line issues and they have defensive issues. Can't see the Commanders drafting one either. You look, Baltimore, certainly someone who you can make that argument for, but Dallas, no. Miami, no. There's a lot of teams picking above the Jets that they would have to theoretically jump in order to get their guy. But I don't think they really need to at this point. And if they are all in on Carnell Tate, we've already talked about it. But I think there's a chance that Mekhi Lemon falls to them at 16 and they're able to go into the second round with Arvell Reese and Mekhi Lemon as the dream scenario and probably a likely scenario as well.
Mekhi Lemon, if he's there at 16, run the card in. If you get a chance to get that level of player there, I'm all in. What will be fascinating is if Jordan Tyson's there, are they taking him, or do the medical concerns scare the Jets away? I think they would take him, but I do think the fact that he's having a workout this upcoming week, that's going to be big for him. If he looks good at the workout, proves he's fully healthy because he didn't participate at the combine or his pro day, it's a big week for Jordan Tyson. It's a big week, I think, for the Jets and Jordan Tyson, because there's a chance he could be there at 16. All right, Asmaniacs, listen up for a second. No matter what you're watching, whether it's New York sports or any game you didn't plan on caring about, there's no better way to stay locked in than with PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made simple. You're just picking more or less on player projections. That's it. No complicated lineups, no nonsense. Just you versus the numbers. And here's why I love it. Even if it's a game you normally wouldn't care about, once you got a lineup going, you're locked in. Every play matters. Every drive matters. Every at-bat matters. I've been mixing sports too. Maybe a little football, throwing some baseball, maybe some basketball. And now you've got action across the board all night. And PrizePicks makes it even better with features like early cash outs if your picks are hitting, the ability to mix multiple sports in one lineup, and you can even see what other people are playing and tail their picks. So if you haven't tried it yet, what are you doing? Download the PrizePicks app right now. Use code HMA. That's HMA, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, it's HMA on PrizePicks. PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. One more sleeper that Samini mentioned that I want to get your thoughts on, and that is San Diego State corner Chris Johnson. And Samini did note that Chris Johnson played at San Diego State, and that is where Darren Muji went to college. So you'd think if anyone's going to have some sort of feel and insider information on the type of player Chris Johnson is, it'd be the GM of the Jets. I say that knowing full well Mike Tannenbaum went to UMass and decided to draft Vlad DeCoste and did not invite Victor Cruz to Jets training camp. So I digress and don't want to go down that path. But anyway, Chris Johnson, break him down. What should Jets fans expect if they end up taking him?
Chris Johnson is, of the three, he's definitely my favorite prospect. Probably my least favorite for the Jets, though, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. He's my highest ranked one out of those three. He's a top 25 player for me on my board overall, my third cornerback in the class. I have a fringe second round grade, like literally fractions of points from him being a first round grade for me. He is, he's got tons of starts under his belt. A 4-year player, 3-year starter at San Diego State. Super fluid athlete. I love the, a little bit of a slight frame at 6 foot. Probably about 180 pounds. He definitely needs to add a little bit more functional mass to be effective at the next level. He epitomizes when you talk about defensive backs and cornerbacks that have zone eyes, like he's that guy. He is the guy that, again, I hate to keep referencing Robert Saleh, but I think, we are so accustomed to what a Robert Saleh defender and a defense it really looks like. And Chris Johnson, for me, is the epitome of that guy. He does his best work in off man. He's going to be a cover 4, cover 3 type player, that has those own eyes, understands what he's looking at, can click and close and make plays on the ball. He's super, he kind of understands route concepts and jumps them and breaks them. At 6 foot, 182 pounds, like I told you, 180 pounds, he is an animal. He's a freaking dog, Jake. Fits the run as good as any cornerback other than Colton Hood in this entire draft class. 4.8% missed tackle rate throughout his career. So, he's San Diego State is what it is. It's not Alabama. It's not Michigan, but they used him at that role, in that jack backer kind of role a lot of the time, where he's kind of sort of a nickelback, kind of sort of a safety, kind of sort of a linebacker. A lot of the role that the Jets are going to use, Minka Fitzpatrick in, and some of the role that they may use Arvell Reese if they draft Arvell Reese. Chris Johnson did that at 6 foot, 180 pounds. That's how good he is fitting the run. He's got a ton of special teams experience, a little bit as a returner, but he makes his noise knocking people on their ass. Excuse my language. Like, he's a gunner. Super, 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 super technical. Does his best work, like I told you, in zone, which is why I question the fit for the Jets. Samini bringing this name up was the one head scratcher for me because, I don't think that there's going to be many teams that run more man coverage and especially press man coverage. And that's just where Chris Johnson doesn't play well, right? He can get stacked up real easily by receivers, especially the bigger, more physical ones. He has the tendency when he's, overwhelmed or dominated, by a physical receiver to get handsy. So he doesn't do well against that. You can't pop him on the outside against a guy like T. Higgins, against a guy like A.J. Brown. They'll eat him for dinner, So he, I think at his frame, he's probably going to be destined to the slot. I think in specific schemes, like a cover 3 or cover 4 base, you can probably have him play the boundary, the off man boundary or the outside zone boundary cornerback slot. That's just not what he's going to be asked to do for the Jets a lot. So the fit is a little awkward for me, but the player's phenomenal, man. Somebody's going to get a steal. And I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. I really wouldn't. With Seattle picking at 32, I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Johnson sneaks into the end of the first round because he is that perfect type of cornerback that Seattle and McDaniel wants there.
Dane Brugler has him as his third corner as well, so you're not alone with being very high on this player. Do you think the Jets, though, they have room for another Chris Johnson? How do you think Christopher Johnson would feel about this decision?
I don't even know if Christopher Johnson knows if he's in Newton or Boonton half the time. So.
Oh, man. Comments, questions, super chats. We'll cut the line. We have a Chad Pennington helmet up for grabs on the show. Let me shout out some amazing listeners who already entered the raffle. Frank P dropping a 10 spot for the people before the show started. So if you're one of the 10 that got a membership from Frank, make sure you thank him. Let's go.
And here we go. Let's go. Let's go.
How about this? A 5 spot from Roster Dread 305. He's playing to win that Chad helmet today.
Hello? You play to win the game.
Damn right, Rosto. Well done. Well done. Ricky NY with a super chat. Dom, you and I were both high on corner Julian Neil, but his vulnerability versus speed receivers gives me pause. Thoughts? For those who don't know, who is Julian Neil? Where is he projected to go? And your thoughts on him as a prospect real quick.
My thoughts on him as a prospect is real good. He's a top 30, top 35 player on my big board. My final big board will be out this week on Jets X Factor. So, shameless plug, check it out there. Julian Neal's my cornerback 5. 6'2", 210 pounds. You talk about a Aaron Glenn type receiver. Aaron Glenn type cornerback, a guy that's tall, that's long, that's physical, that can play physical press man. For me, that's, there's only a couple of them in this class. Julian Neal is one of them. Solid tackler, drive through, wrap and drive tackler. I'm not necessarily concerned with his long speed, as Ricky NY talks about here. They asked him to play a lot of off coverage. I just think that he was a tick late on a lot of stuff. They asked him to do a little too much off coverage. If you ask me, at Arkansas, that's not his bread and butter. Very similar to what A.Z. Thomas was in Florida State, where they came to their epiphany and realized that, he did his best work as a press man on an island. I think Julian Neal will do the same. Almost 34-inch arms too. Taller cornerback, so he's got those high hips. Sinking and breaking sometimes is a little bit harder, or flipping them to turn and run is a little bit harder for guys like that. But the press technique is really good. He can fly off the edge as a blitzer when he's called upon to do so. I think he understands the game and understands defense and how to use the boundary, especially as an extra defender. I think he does that really good, using his body and the sideline to be the barrier between the receiver and the ball. Julian Neil is probably going to go a lot later than I graded him out. He's a late second round pick for me, late second, early third grade. Probably more of a day 3 guy in real draft terms because, he's kind of typecasted. I don't think he's going to fit very well in an off-man scheme. So, you get a defense like Aaron Glenn, who's going to be looking for those long, tall, long, physical press man guys. Neil is a perfect fit.
Hey, here's the deal. Just got no chance unless you click on that like button. And you got to make sure you subscribe to the Jake Asman Show. You don't, you can get the f*** out. Now let's go, Asmaniacs. We're built for this shit.